There's a quiet war raging inside each of us. No soldiers, no banners, no sound of battle. Only the trembling of the heart, the heat that rises when someone wrongs us, the bitterness that clings long after the wound is closed. We call it anger. We justify it, feed it, wear it like armor. But over time, that armor becomes a prison. Imagine standing in front of a mirror, trying to see the face of your enemy, only to find your own reflection staring back. The eyes are tired. The heart, heavy. The enemy you've been fighting isn't out there. It's the storm that lives within. And yet, we hold on. Because letting go feels like losing. Because forgiveness feels like surrender. Because rage gives us something to stand on when everything else falls apart. But what if anger is the very thing that blinds us from peace? What if the fire we direct toward others has been burning our own house down all along? In the stillness between breaths, when the noise fades, one truth begins to whisper. Our greatest battle is not against others, but against ourselves. In the modern world, anger has found a new home, not in the streets or on the battlefield, but in the palm of our hands. A glowing screen, a few words, a stranger's opinion, and suddenly, the quiet within us ignites. We scroll endlessly, each post another spark, each comment another wound. We see injustice, arrogance, cruelty, and something inside us tightens. We tell ourselves it's righteous anger, the kind that fuels justice. But beneath that moral fire, there's a darker ember: ego, pain, the need to be right. Every day we fight invisible wars against systems, opinions, and ghosts from our past. Yet the more we fight, the less peace we find. The paradox is this: the more we express our rage, the more it owns us. Modern society tells us that expressing anger is liberation. But what if it's just another form of bondage? We shout online, slam doors, rehearse old arguments in our minds, and somehow the world doesn't change, only our hearts grow harder. We've mistaken noise for strength. We've confused resistance with wisdom, and in trying to defeat others, we become the very thing we despise: reactive, blind, unfree. There's a strange irony in this age of mindfulness and self-help. We post quotes about peace while silently resenting those who disagree. We talk of love while clutching grudges that have fossilized over years. It's not hypocrisy, it's heartbreak. We want peace, but we fear the price of it: humility. To release anger means to admit our own vulnerability. It means acknowledging that pain is not weakness. But modern life rarely allows that pause. Everything moves too fast. Notifications, opinions, injustices flashing before our eyes. We're trained to react before we reflect, to burn before we breathe. And so, anger becomes the rhythm of our days, disguised as productivity, disguised as passion. But beneath it all, the spirit is exhausted. If you've ever felt that quiet fatigue, that ache after the rage has passed, you know this truth. Anger never leaves empty-handed. It takes something every time: your peace, your clarity, your lightness of being. And the cruelest part? The one we're angry at often goes on living unaware. The only one imprisoned is us. We live in an age where we can conquer planets, but not our tempers. We can design machines that think, but not hearts that forgive. Maybe that's the true paradox of progress. The more powerful we become outwardly, the more fragile we grow within. So the question remains, if anger has built its home inside us, how do we gently ask it to leave? How do we return to the quiet mind that once knew how to forgive? Anger is not evil. It's a message, raw, sacred, ancient. It's the body's alarm, the mind's protest, the heart's cry for something it cannot name. But when we fail to listen with understanding, anger becomes something else. A poison disguised as power. The Dalai Lama once said, "Our enemies are our greatest teachers." At first, it sounds absurd. How could those who wound us become our guides? And yet, beneath that paradox lies a truth only the calm can see. The person who provokes us is not showing us their darkness. They're revealing our own. Each flash of irritation, each wave of rage, is a mirror, reflecting the parts of ourselves we've yet to heal. When someone insults us and we explode, it's not their words that destroy our peace. It's the wound inside us that was waiting to be touched. The true battlefield is not between two people, but between reaction and awareness. Imagine standing on a cliff, the sea roaring below. A storm builds on the horizon, lightning, wind, waves crashing. That storm is anger. And you, standing at its edge, have two choices: to jump into the chaos or to stand and watch. The first path feels alive. You scream, fight, and burn. The second feels impossible, to simply watch the storm without joining it. But in that stillness lies mastery, to observe without being consumed, to feel the fire without letting it scorch your soul. Modern wisdom often tells us to manage anger, to control it like a wild animal. But control still implies struggle. The deeper wisdom of the East, from the teachings of the Buddha, Lao Tzu, and the Dalai Lama, speaks of understanding, not suppression. Because what we understand, we no longer fear. And what we no longer fear loses its power to rule us. Think of a candle's flame. Touch it blindly, and you burn. Study it closely, and you see. It only burns when fed. Anger works the same way. It survives on stories, the ones we replay endlessly. He shouldn't have said that. She betrayed me. I deserve better. Each repetition adds fuel. But when we stop feeding those thoughts, the flame flickers, weakens, and quietly dies. The practice is not about becoming emotionless, it's about becoming aware. When anger rises, breathe. Don't push it away. Don't act on it. Just notice the heat, the tightening chest, the thoughts racing in defense. And then, with gentle curiosity, ask, what pain is this anger trying to protect? You'll often find sorrow beneath it, fear, or the simple ache of being misunderstood. To see this is to reclaim your freedom. Because once you see anger not as your identity, but as a passing visitor, it can no longer command you. Forgiveness then ceases to be a moral duty. It becomes an act of self-liberation. You forgive not to excuse others, but to unchain yourself. You realize that holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other to suffer. And in that moment, something profound happens. The walls you built to keep pain out begin to crumble, and peace, shy, ancient, and waiting, steps back in. Yet, the ego resists this truth. It whispers, If I let go, I'll look weak. If I forgive, they'll win. But what if true strength lies not in holding on, but in releasing what harms you? What if the victory is inner, invisible to the world but luminous within? This is not the peace of avoidance, nor the numb calm of denial. It's the fierce serenity that comes when you stop fighting reality. When you see that every person who hurts you is also hurt, that every insult is a mirror of someone's suffering, not your worth. When we start seeing anger this way, something beautiful unfolds. Compassion. Not the soft, sentimental kind, but the kind that burns through delusion. Compassion that says, I too have been lost like you. I too have hurt others in my confusion. In that space, anger loses its shape. It dissolves into understanding. And understanding, that quiet seeing, becomes love's first whisper. We begin to realize the purpose of anger was never destruction. It was a signal, a teacher pointing toward the wound within. Once we've learned the lesson, we no longer need the pain. The Dalai Lama teaches that when you see your anger clearly, it transforms into patience. And patience is not passive. It's the power to hold fire in your hands without being burned. It's the strength to stand in the storm, knowing you are the sky, vast, untouched, eternal. So perhaps the true spiritual path is not about banishing anger, but bowing to it, saying softly, I see you. You've tried to protect me, but now I am ready to choose peace. And in that choice, in that single moment of awareness, lifetimes of suffering begin to fade. Because anger cannot survive in the light of understanding, and the light has always been within you. There was once a monk named Tenzin who lived high in the Himalayas, in a monastery wrapped in clouds. He was known for his calm presence, the way he walked as if listening to the earth itself, the way silence seemed to follow him like a faithful companion. But even monks carry storms. One winter morning, Tenzin discovered that his favorite prayer bowl, a gift from his late teacher, had been broken. The younger monks whispered that another novice, Lobsang, had accidentally dropped it while cleaning. For the first time in years, something flared inside Tenzin. His chest tightened, his breath shortened. The room seemed smaller, darker. He told himself it wasn't about the bowl. It was about respect, carelessness, responsibility. But beneath all the noble words was attachment. When he found Lobsang trembling and pale, Tenzin's voice rose like thunder in the quiet hall. Words became sharper than stones. You think being sorry is enough? That bowl carried the memory of my teacher. Lobsang bowed, tears falling silently on the floor. But Tenzin turned away, unable to look at him, or at himself. For days the monastery felt different. The chanting seemed hollow, the mountains distant. Every time Tenzin closed his eyes, he saw the shattered bowl, and anger returned like an unwanted guest. One evening, an old hermit who often visited the monastery came to share tea. He saw the change in Tenzin's eyes and said quietly, "Tell me, monk, what troubles you?" Tenzin sighed. "I lost my peace because a foolish boy broke my teacher's bowl." The hermit smiled faintly. "Ah, and how many times have you broken your own peace since then?" Tenzin looked down. "Too many." "Then who truly broke the bowl?" the hermit asked. "The boy or your anger?" The question hung in the air, still as snow. That night, Tenzin couldn't sleep. He lit a single candle and gathered the broken pieces of the bowl. Under its faint glow, he noticed something strange. The cracks caught the light, reflecting it like rivers of gold. Slowly, he began to piece them together with sap and dust. The more he worked, the quieter his breath became. The anger that once roared now whispered, softer, almost sorrowful. When dawn came, the bowl was whole again, imperfect, scarred, but radiant. Tenzin took it outside, where the first light touched the peaks. He placed it before him and began to chant, not for his teacher, not for the bowl, but for the boy, and for himself. When Lobsang approached the next morning, still hesitant, Tenzin handed him the bowl. "You broke it," he said softly, "but you also helped me see what was broken in me." Lobsang wept openly, and Tenzin smiled. The bowl had become something more, not a relic of his teacher, but a mirror of his own transformation. Years later, travelers would come to the monastery and ask to see the golden bowl, and Tenzin would tell them, "It is not gold that holds it together. It is understanding." The bowl's cracks, like all our wounds, were no longer flaws. They were symbols of where the light had entered. And so the story spread across valleys and villages, not as a tale of loss, but of awakening. Because in every life, something breaks. A trust, a dream, a piece of the heart. And when it does, anger rushes in, demanding justice. But the path of the wise is not to rebuild what was, but to see beauty in the breaking, to fill the cracks with patience, humility, and love. Like the monk, we all hold our shattered bowls, wondering who to blame. But the truth waits quietly, like dawn behind the mountains. Peace is not found in what remains unbroken. It is found in how gently we gather the pieces. There comes a moment, in every life, when anger no longer feels powerful, only heavy. When the voice we once raised to defend ourselves begins to tremble. When the fire that once made us feel alive only leaves us exhausted and cold. It's in that moment, the quiet after the storm, that we finally begin to see. Anger was never truly about others. It was about the pain we couldn't carry, the fear we couldn't name, the hurt we couldn't face. It was a shield we built as children and forgot to put down as adults. And while it may have protected us once, it now keeps us from touching life fully. Think about how many years have been lost to silent grudges, how many friendships faded, not because of great betrayal, but because of pride that refused to soften. How many nights were spent replaying the same scene, the same words, the same ache. And for what? We think holding on to anger gives us control, but it is anger that holds us. It chains our hearts to the past and whispers lies in the dark. You can't forgive. You'll be hurt again. But what if forgiveness isn't weakness? What if it's the final act of strength? The Dalai Lama once said, "If you can, help others. If you cannot, at least do not harm them." But what if the one we harm most often is ourselves? Every moment spent in resentment is a moment stolen from peace, from joy, from presence. We say we want happiness, but happiness cannot live in a house full of anger. To forgive is not to forget. It is to see clearly. It is to recognize that the one who hurt you is also trapped in their own pain. It is to understand that their cruelty, their indifference, their silence, all came from their wounds, not your worth. And that realization changes everything. Because once you see the shared suffering beneath all conflict, compassion becomes inevitable. It doesn't mean you must return or trust again. It means you release the burden that never belonged to you. You begin to breathe differently. You begin to look at the world not through the eyes of injury, but through the eyes of understanding. In that shift, anger transforms into wisdom. The same energy that once sought revenge becomes the fire that forges patience. The same pain that once closed your heart becomes the doorway to empathy. There is a quiet power in those who have forgiven deeply. They walk slower. They listen more. They no longer need to win, because they have already won the war within. Maybe peace doesn't come when everything is perfect. Maybe it comes when you finally stop trying to control how others behave and start mastering how you respond. And in that mastery, you find a love that no one can take from you. Not romantic love, not the love of the world, but the still, luminous love that arises when your heart no longer wages war against itself. That is the moment when the fire inside no longer burns, it warms. And you realize that what you once called weakness was your greatest strength all along. When the storm of anger finally passes, what remains is not emptiness, but clarity. Like the air after rain, the heart feels washed, tender, open once again. You begin to see how much energy was spent fighting ghosts, how much of your life was shaped not by love, but by resistance. And yet, you also see that every flame, every ache, every outburst was a teacher. Anger was never your enemy. It was the compass, pointing toward the wound that longed to be healed. Now you stand at a quiet threshold. One path continues the old pattern: to fight, defend, justify. The other invites silence, compassion, surrender. It asks nothing of you except honesty. To look within and whisper, "I forgive," not for them, but for me. Forgiveness does not erase the past. It transforms its meaning. Pain becomes wisdom. Loss becomes space. And even your enemies become your mirrors, showing you the parts of yourself still waiting to be embraced. So tonight, when anger stirs in your chest, do not rush to escape it. Breathe. Listen. Let it speak. And when it's finished, let it rest. Because peace is not the absence of fire. It is the quiet knowing that you are not the flame. And as the Dalai Lama reminds us, the enemy is not out there. The enemy is the anger within. Defeat that, and you are free. So close your eyes, release your grip, and feel, for the first time, how light your hands truly are when they are no longer holding on. Anger is the voice of pain, asking to be understood. Listen deeply, and it becomes peace.